What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. Oh, before we go into this any further, let's go ahead and switch those panels the way it's supposed to be. So let's go ahead and introduce our guest. You've seen her several times on this show before. We did have a column together at My MMA News called King and Slim. My good friend, my buddy, my pal, somebody I miss very much because we don't get to talk as often as I'd like, but Kristen King of My MMA News and Bloody Elbow. How are you doing, Kristen?
I'm doing good, guys. What's going on? Happy Black History Month. It's the first day, so I got to be repping. I don't know if you can see this, but this is Kofi Kingston and Big E from WWE, and this was I believe this was an episode of SmackDown where they came into the ring and they immediately took a knee and put a fist in the air in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. So I felt like because it's the first day of Black History Month, this would be an appropriate shirt to wear. So I'm doing good today, guys. What's going on? I miss all of you, by the way. It's been a while. Happy New Year as well. I couldn't even that.
It's been way too long, so you got to come back on here more often. We'll make sure this is a regular thing. And of course, we've got the senior editor of Sherdog.com, the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I don't know about all trades, but I could certainly master the trade of having a week off from the endless storm of UFC events. So, it was an interesting weekend we just finished up, and I can't wait to talk about it.
All right, good thing right here. So, of course, the panel every week is anchored by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. My man, Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on?
I almost want my stat of the week this week to be 8 because I was able to get a full 8 hours of sleep after Saturday night because we didn't stay up until who knows when to cover UFC Fight Night 187, Jones versus Johnson. And we go, oh boy, I'm so excited for this card. Let's talk about it because there are 14 fights on it. Let's get ready because it's the 7th week in a row and we have 18 more to go in the next month. Anyway, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to have this minute to breathe. I'm very happy Kristen's with us. I think this is going to be a lot of fun because there was actually some substantive discussion to be had on what happened this past weekend in the world of punching, which I'm sure you guys were totally glued to your televisions and computer screens to watch the other world of MMA, the non-UFC area, like one that gave us the stat of the week. There has been one knockout of its type, and I'll describe it when we get there. KSW 58, the title fight. A knockout happened when a fighter threw an overhand right and the crook of his elbow between his forearm and his bicep bunked the other guy in the head, knocked him out. So that is the first forearm strike knockout in KFC history. We'll go with KFW history. We'll go with that. Rock and roll.
The old Russian sickle, the Nikita Koloff, it was
more like a clothesline than a hook, but pretty crazy stuff from KSW. So I'm going to jump a little bit off script, go out the order of our outline here, just a tad, because there wasn't a UFC this weekend as we mentioned before, but there was KSW, there was LFA, there was XMMA as well. Out of these events, did we all watch them, and if you did, what felt like the biggest event? What felt like the main show for the weekend?
KSW always feels big. They have outstanding production values. Arguably, top 3 production values along with the UFC and Bellator. KSW always feels really big, and XMMA was completely jammed with familiar names to the average UFC fan, even if honestly, it's all people who washed out of the UFC on 3 losses. They had literally 6 fighters who washed out of the UFC on 3 straight losses or more. But probably LFA. LFA had at least 2 fighters that I think will be in the UFC within 18 months, which I don't think you can say for either of the other 2 shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with you. That was actually my pick too. And I think that's just because I'm like a prospect person and I love watching Legacy Fighting Alliance just because I get to keep up with all of the potential stars that are supposed to be coming in. And I know LFA is somewhat of a feeder league, but I feel like they are just so much more on like a different level than others. And I love watching all of their fights, and I think that they're very entertaining. You have stars like, look at someone like Tabitha Ricci. Like, I've spoken with her, I've interviewed her. She is one of those judo type fighters who is, if she does more training, she's going to be super well rounded, and that's a star. Every time I watch LFA, I'm like, that person can be a star, that person can be a star. KSW, I get the same sense. Like, yeah, I can see that happening, but it might take a little bit longer. At least with LFA, there's like a direct line to the UFC. And I just feel like anytime there's a spot available, short notice fight, you know they're going to go for some LFA dude. So LFA is always the biggest show to me. And that just could be because of my bias with watching it. I don't know.
Man, you guys almost had me. I almost flipped it to go unanimous on our 3 right now. I mean, Josh Fremd, that guy can hit like a train. Dakota Harry Bush, we're going to be talking about him. I can't wait for Bruce Buffer to shout Harry Bush in either a crowded building or an empty UFC Apex where it kind of echoes a little bit. I'm okay with either. Just let's do it. LFA has a lot of that. I'm watching you, Dakota Bush. We're gonna see you again sometime. Camuela Kirk on their last show. I'm like, that kid, he might have it. But when it comes to biggest, I think of name recognition, I think of potential viewers, I will have to give this to the rebirth, if you will, of XMMA, because Extreme MMA, by the way, for those unfamiliar, this was not in fact their first show. This was their first show on U.S. soil. This is a company from 2007 to 2009, held 8 or 9 events, and they had some pretty decent names: David Loiseau, Ryan Jimmo, War Machine for better or worse. But they've had some names of note and of merit that they brought on their shows before. I don't know what happened from 2009 to 2021 to bring back their organization, but they did. And it delivered because I expected a lot of the matches to be a little more competitive, but there were some intense knockouts and finishes and beatdowns, and it felt to me, this is something I described earlier. XMMA felt like a show where the fighters think they can win one fight in XMMA and be right back to the UFC, but it probably won't work like that because of their losing streaks that they suffered in the UFC to get back. So this is the perfect situation for XMMA to build a roster of fighters who think they can win one and go right back. This is the come on, we'll take you in. Oh, sure, yeah, the UFC will take you. Yeah, totally. Just win one here and you'll probably be good to go. And they're not, obviously. I love Kyle Bochniak. I think the UFC kind of put him through the ringer, and he probably will make his way back, but not after that one win. So XMMA, this is the spot with no other leagues really taking these sort of decent UFC castouts. This is the place for them.
And isn't Florida the perfect place for them to pop back up? Lots of major camps with guys just sitting there.
Yeah.
And they're like, nobody's going to fly me to Abu Dhabi, but I need fights. I need to get back on the radar. Perfect time to move from Canada to Florida.
Yeah. If Titan has MMA Masters in its corner, XMMA can take, all the rest. And that's easy.
Yeah.
Easy. That's
and they had at least 2 Sanford guys.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's you couldn't ask for a better location aside from Vegas to hold a MMA promotion right now in these conditions. So definitely XMMA had a leg up on some of the competition. But it's hard to talk about a big promotion and not put KSW number 1 out of these names. I mean, they consistently have the big fight feel. They consistently have the biggest crowds, the most show production and whatnot, and they typically have, for whatever reason, the wackiest variety of finishes and just bizarre occurrences. I mean, you had a guy who won a fight and decided to take down his opponent afterward because you had a guy get knocked out with a bicep. KSW continually delivers on the strange things that we either love or hate about mixed martial arts. I mean, it's the haven of strong men competing in MMA. It's just so much that you got such of a carnival feel to it. In addition to like how hyped the crowds can be, how ridiculously jacked the fighters are and stuff. It's so hard not to put them at the top of the list over the weekend. Also, I think they had, judging by social media, I think the timeline was more excited about KSW overall than any other promotion. Granted, I think the James Vick knockout was the moment of the weekend. Even with the bicep knockout, I think the James Vick knockout had the most like electricity as far as conversation generated around it. But KSW overall had an event that I think electrified the timeline more. But speaking of,
I wanted to mention one. Actually, speaking of electrifying, did you guys see the KSW introduction after the first prelim happened? They had the walkouts, and all the fighters were holding these light up sticks, these big fluorescent tubes, and the techno or the electronic music was playing in the background as they would walk into these like light wheels, like. It's a beautiful spectacle. Whatever drugs they're taking, continue as long as they're not doing like permanent damage, because that I enjoyed that pageantry as much as the event itself.
And honestly, how great would it be if they followed through on their hopes to partner or do cross promotional events with like Bellator and stuff? I know that their CEO was talking about it a few months ago, and I'm just like, I think that'd be great because Bellator also has like those very like showy introductions, especially when it comes to fighter walkouts and stuff like that. Imagine that and KSW like together. I'd have the time of my life watching that production. They should do something. But I don't know what it is about like cross promotional stuff that so many people seem like, I don't know, like reticent on. It's just like, I understand you want to say that your promotion is the best, but sometimes working in like hand in hand with another promotion can also prove that as well. And I feel like KSW is right there along the lines of like UFC and Bellator. Had they done a little bit more, they could really take this to the next level. It just depends on what they do.
You know, the cross promotion plans, I'm really surprised they haven't come to fruition just yet. I interviewed Martin Lewandowski, the CEO of KSW, a while back. This was like fight week for UFC 239, I believe it was, in Vegas. I talked to him, and you know, and this was something he was adamant about. In fact, the first time I spoke to him online, where we spoke, I think over Skype or something, he was very adamant about co-promoting. Then I've asked Scott Coker about co-promoting with KSW, and he seemed open to the idea. It's amazing that it hasn't happened yet, because I believe they've even discussed like something involving Paul Daly being used at a couple of events for KSW. And you know, the writing's on the wall, like especially with Bellator's push to get into Europe. You know, granted, COVID has put a serious damper on any sort of fight league trying to expand, or any business period trying to expand. You know, Bellator was putting a lot of effort into Europe, and it just makes sense to partner with probably the biggest brand in mixed martial arts in Europe, especially if they're open to the idea. So I'm so shocked it hasn't happened yet, but I'd imagine, considering the climate, I think I said this on this show before, that the climate that we're in with MMA right now, with the UFC kind of shedding fighters that still have a lot of life left in them, shedding big names and afraid of the antitrust suit and whatever else the case may be, you're having enough people on the free market where it might make sense for a lot of these promotions to link up. And while you may not be able to overtake the UFC, you can all get a huge piece of the pie as a solid number two. So there's serious potential there. And, you know, Kristen, spot on with that. Let's hope we see that. But you know what? I think, speaking of those electrifying moments, James Vick's knockout was something that really stood out to the timeline big time. So this will be for our swing or miss segment this week. After a fighter like James Vick suffers a series of bad KO losses, I mean, should it be time for an athletic commission to intervene and just stop giving them licenses to fight?
You know, it's really an odd situation that athletic commissions find themselves in, because I have seen on multiple numerous bases. I even pulled up a picture that I actually wish I could share the screen to show of a fighter who lost a fight by first round knockout, and the commission suspended the fighter indefinitely with the quote, "poor skills, too many losses in a row." This was the actual official commission document of the fighter.
I think got to put Silva like that.
Yeah, man. What can you say? And it almost feels like it would behoove them to think about that when a fighter suffers multiple knockouts. I might be going against some things I've said in the past, and I'm okay with that. But I think I'll swing here because I think that there's if no one else will have the fighter's best interest in mind, if the fighter won't put their best interest, their brain health in mind, if their coaches and their corners and their team won't seem to pay attention, their families and friends won't say, "Hey man, maybe you should, slow your roll for a minute, get your head on straight, and then, chew on this." Maybe that is where the commissions go. Like we've talked many times about corner stoppages and how somebody, if the fighter isn't willing to tap out, if the corner isn't willing to say, "No, we're good," and throw in the towel, then the referee can say, "Okay, enough's enough." Maybe this is that version of that. Maybe this is when a fighter can, or a commission can go, "Boy, we've seen highlights of," James Vick, this is his fourth bad knockout in 5 losses. And the loss he had was to Paul Felder, which he took some pretty good damage in that fight too. And he lost. It was a 15-minute fight, if I remember correctly. So this is a guy in James Vick who his chin went from 60 to 0 real quick. And I think this probably wouldn't be a terrible thing I don't think the commission would be overstepping their bounds if they said, "We won't license you for another little while. We'll at least make you wait."
The commission is supposed to be about fighter safety, so it only makes sense that someone step in, especially a government agency that is supposed to be a neutral party in the proceedings of a fight, should say, "Hey, maybe you aren't fit for this," or maybe we are going to mandate a lower level of competition.
I think that just to step on everybody's toes, I think the commission is the only disinterested party. Like the commission has no vested interest in if James Vick fights in their area again. This isn't a Conor McGregor who the commission would look at and go, "Boy, we could make a lot of money if this fighter came to our jurisdiction." This is a fighter who can headline, lower tier cards. He's still a name, but it won't hurt anybody's bottom line. So I think compared to the teams and the promotion that has him and the fighter himself, we're always like, "Of course I want to fight. He should fight." The commission can look and say, "Okay, objectively speaking," and maybe involve a medical professional or two, "this doesn't look good."
Yeah, I think they have to assume some kind of responsibility when it comes down to that. But then I'm also thinking under the thought process that sometimes they license people that have no business being in the ring or cage. A recent example, it's not MMA related, it's boxing related, but I can't remember the boxer's name. She was a champion, world champion, and they put a girl in there that was 0 and something, and she got dusted in 6 seconds. If I am entrusting the commission to make the decision whether or not, hey, maybe that person should no longer be fighting, or maybe they should sit out for a while, if I'm trusting them to do that while they're still doing this other stuff and putting in people that have no business being in there, it's very much a toss-up for me, because I would hope that they would assume some responsibility, but then it's also, at the end of the day, what type of things that they're working for. I don't know if they want that responsibility, essentially. It sounds good on paper. I would say maybe 7 out of 10 times they do the right things, but there are certain instances where the commission does not step in when they need to, and I feel like that's a way of saying that they're not overstepping their boundaries. But in situations like these, with the James Vick thing, at some point you're going to have to say something, because this guy is going to get battered again if they continue to let him go out there. And I think the MMA fighting story on Spencer Fisher can be used as almost like a guiding decision maker, essentially, because a lot of people were shocked by that. A lot of people were concerned at the type of damage he's taken over the years. we could see the same thing happen with James Vick because he's been beaten and battered repeatedly in the last couple of fights, you know? So I would hope that the commission would step in. I'm fine with them doing that, but I'm also like, I don't expect them to, especially if there is money on the line or they just need an opponent right away.
Ben, so I definitely want to kick it to you really quick because I know you've done a lot of work at some of the local shows in Texas, and you know, as a fan, I've gone to plenty of local shows in the DC area and whatnot. Haven't been any. I've only been to a couple of local shows since I moved out to LA, but still, like we've seen on an amateur and like the low level pro level, we've seen some egregious things that the commission has let slide. I can recall a couple of times seeing people in the cage and like, wow, this person does not belong here. I've seen a guy who looked like he never even lifted a pencil in his life with like no build, no nothing to show any level of athleticism, standing in the cage looking terrified before that bell rings, only to get his cap peeled back within like 20 seconds. So Ben, I know you've seen plenty of things like that. Like when you look at what an athletic commission will let slide, I mean, do you trust them to do this properly, or do you think it's like the rope will be so long that it's no level of safety involved in that?
Well, I do have an interesting point of view being in Texas, because while Texas is a little bit Wild West as far as the commission goes, halfway between me and Kristen, some of the most egregious shit I've ever seen is when I've been over the border in Louisiana. Like that. Anyway, in a perfect world, you'd be able to trust the commissions to do the best by fighters, if only out of a selfish concern for their own liability. But there is no liability. Nobody sues the commission. Nobody sued, the commission after somebody certified Kimbo and Dada, fit to engage in a fight, and Dada spent a week in the hospital afterwards, and Kimbo died like 4 months later of an undiagnosed heart condition. I mean, ideally, that's where the liability would lay. You can't trust the fighters to make these decisions. Everything in them says, I can still do this. I mean, it's the way they're wired. You can't trust the camps to make that decision. None of them want to. You can't even trust them to throw in the towel in the heat of the moment when their dude's getting his ass kicked. Let alone, by the cold light of day, once he's back in the gym looking good. Oh, and by the way, you're getting the percentage of his check. I don't have an answer for it, because even if some commissions do the right thing, that just sends these fighters flocking to less well-regulated areas. And I speak of my own state in that regard. There's a reason that basically all of jiu-jitsu guy,
Jake Paul.
God damn it. His name slips on my mind right now, but the Abu Dhabi winner that beat Marcelo Garcia in the absolute division, the big guy.
Oh, Gabby Garcia.
I hate you guys. He had a brain, like he had a potential aneurysm. And because of that, even though the UFC wanted to sign him, he just ended up fighting for like LFA, down here in Texas. Anyway, I mean, Texas is a place where people flock for less, for less regulation. Yeah, I mean, I'm just rambling here. I don't have an answer for it. One thing I do want to point out is, any of you or anybody watching this who saw the video clip or a GIF of the James Vick finish where he gets punched like 20 times and is just tottering all over the cage. The worst part of that is he did not have his mouth guard in for any of that. He took like a dozen flush shots to the mouth, 6 uppercuts straight to the jaw without his mouthpiece in. Like, they needed a cage-side dentist for that shit. How his corner did not throw the towel in. It's one thing to let your man go out on a shield and get knocked out, but if you're about to incur a dental bill that's twice your purse, unconscionable.
Yeah. That was one of the worst knockouts I've seen in quite some time. So, and not worse in the sense like viscerally exciting, like like the Joaquin Buckley or nothing along those lines where it's spectacular, but where it's scary, where it's genuinely terrifying to see someone take that level of punishment. And I'm reminded of the Tim Hague incident. How the Edmonton Commission, let this man compete several times after having the string of knockouts between boxing and MMA, with these ridiculously short suspension periods, and the man dies in the ring or dies the day after his last fight. So, it's got to be somebody's responsibility. And considering that the idea behind an athletic commission is fighter safety, and something that we can't necessarily trust a promoter to operate. We can't trust the fighters or their camps to operate. Well, the third neutral party should be stepping in. What that looks like, I don't quite know. And judging by the standards that have been set already, I'm willing to bet they do a disastrous job of it, but something does need to be done. Now,
Robert Drysdale.
Thank
you. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Because I was just going to name YouTube people. So I had a few other names. I was wondering. Charlie Z was going to be the next name I threw out there.
Charlie Z, 50-0. Probably 100-0 by now.
I mean, hey, he defeated Deontay Wilder. We all saw it. So I kept hoping I would run into that guy at a gym out here. I was hoping I'd run into him. I wouldn't mind going viral with my shin upside his head. That's another story. Now let's move on to perhaps the best title segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. So there was a lot of things that did happen in the world of combat sports. We didn't have a packed UFC schedule, but we did have people getting punched in the face for money. We did have fighters going out doing whatever they do and drumming up controversy, whatever the case may be. So let's talk about it. Ben, I will begin with you. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, I will. I'll circle right back to XMMA. For once, the most interesting thing going on in Florida this weekend was not Kristen King's T-shirt drawer, but a fight event. We already talked about the James Vick fight, kind of how chilling it was. The card, as I said before, was completely packed with UFC, I hate to say rejects, but people who had been let go by the UFC clearly want to win their way back, trying to do so with varying degrees of success. One guy who was there was Marcelo Golm. If you don't remember him, he is a heavyweight from Brazil who won his first fight in the UFC back in 2017, then lost 3 straight and was released. He appeared at XMMA over the weekend. He beat a Louisianan named Brandon Hebert. That's now 2 wins in a row for Golm since being released by the UFC. He's just 28 years old. He is a true big-bodied heavyweight with knockout power. I expect we'll see him back in the UFC, but that's not what is interesting or surprising about this. At XMMA, he walked into the cage wearing UFC fight kit trunks, which right off the bat, I mean, dress for the job you want, but I mean, I'm surprised that was allowed to slide, but that is not even what's funny. They were not his trunks. The trunks he was wearing were UFC fight kit trunks, and they said De Abreu on the leg. Now, it is possible that his name is Marcelo Golm de Abreu. I couldn't verify that, but, Portuguese, like Spanish, is a, 2 last name culture. But I looked at all of his UFC fight photos, and in those, his trunk said Golm. So as far as I can tell, he was wearing somebody else's UFC shorts in the cage on Saturday.
I think it was Kristen Abreu's, by the way.
Okay, well, Kristen Abreu. Now, at least Kristen Abreu has fight kits in about 4 different sizes, given his UFC run. So, you can always go to the Abreu store if you need some UFC shorts. Whether your waist is like 24, 34, or 44, he's got them for you, But it's one of the most ridiculous things I've seen in an MMA cage in a while, in a completely charming and harmless way that didn't involve, it might have involved brain damage, but the brain damage was before the clothing choice rather than after. So I'm here for it. Marcelo Golm de Abreu, from the ex-UFC fighter thrift store, God bless you. Ant Walker is frozen with amusement. He just cannot believe this. Look at that.
Him. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh my God.
Well,
I love that it froze on such a disapproving look too.
Oh yeah, he know we know what we did. You know what you did.
You know what he's thinking at this
Oh
point.
yeah. We were all being judged. So I guess then I'll throw out mine while we're scrambling to figure out what's going on. If we need to back up, we can back up.
Oh yeah, I don't know what just happened there.
It is what it is. So speaking of it is what it is, let's leave the fight world, the actual active fight world, just for a second, and circle back to a story that you may remember from a few weeks ago, when a certain fighter was fighting at UFC 257 and then he wasn't anymore. And a certain fighter on the UFC at UFC 257 was on the roster and then he wasn't anymore. Let's talk about Ottman Azaitar. This week he came out on Instagram, post not coming out in that way, and said, you don't know the whole story. Well, I need to tone it back because that's not what I mean. It basically sounded like, once you know what the real thing was going on, you won't blame me. I was protecting somebody, something like that. And we may is the operative word, may have an answer to what was in the bag, what was in the mysterious bag that Ottman Azaitar had brought up with him. And we say may because his brother, who was in his corner, who was going to be in his corner for that fight, UFC fighter Abu Azaitar, was suspended from USADA for taking medication that he was prescribed and not allowed to take. Basically, it's the kind of substance. It's tamoxifen. It helps you clean after your cycles are over. To normalize and to stabilize. Claimed it was for a medical reason, but he didn't get a TUE or any of those exemptions to get it cleared. And he was suspended for 7 months. 7 months. That's arbitrary, but okay. Suspended for 7 months. And it makes you wonder if Ottman Azaitar was being a good brother and helping him get the medicine he so desperately needed. Maybe there's a silver lining to this story, and Azaitar was actually being a good brother, trying to sneak in a banned USADA substance and seeing needles and going, oh no, they must be something. Maybe.
Doubtful. Very doubtful.
Yeah, but a guy can dream.
Yeah, but
that's still sketchy as hell.
Yeah.
It was totally a pair of Klitz and Abreu's fight trunks in that bag.
He's just stealing them now.
Like, just a note: you're gonna have to take these in some.
Just went to TJ Maxx and bought all of them up. All right, so
Reebok suddenly going,
and there's like 50 shorts, but they're all Abreu shorts.
Reebok just
had an overrun of these.
How is it that we suddenly have a run on Abreu shorts right before the end of the deal? Get ready, Venom. The Abreu is coming.
Abreu versus Gibbler. All right, so I'm not surprised. Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of the UFC. Wake up this morning, February 1st, and open Twitter, and I see the UFC is celebrating Black History Month. Yeah, right. So to that performative gesture, just I take it as an open invitation. I put it out on Twitter, but let y'all know, if you want the smoke, I am here for it. I think it's a gesture that means absolutely nothing, but I relish the opportunity to slap some of you fools up that like to get on here and say this dumb shit. So please, if anyone feels triggered about the fact that Black History Month exists, or that mixed martial arts in any way, shape, or form recognizes Black History Month, please come get this work. I'm right here.
Or just shut the fuck up and wait for White History Year to start back up on March 1st.
I mean, the Clapback Cartel is here and ready to get it in. So you know where to find me. All right. And Kristen, what is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So it's going to come from a couple of hours ago. I think there was an announcement from AG Fight, a Brazilian media outlet, and they reported that there was a fight between Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira that was being spoken about. And I think upon like immediate reading that, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of shocking, I guess. I guess we're working under the guise that Dustin Poirier is basically the uncrowned champion and this is a #1 contenders fight, essentially, right? And then it comes out that, well, it was offered, but Charles Oliveira declined. And I'm like, okay, so this was a nothing burger, basically. Like, obviously, we've known about Charles Oliveira and a Michael Chandler fight potentially happening. That almost happened at I believe, UFC 257, or immediately after. I think Charles Oliveira was offered a fight with Michael Chandler. He said no, he wasn't going to be able to cut weight as soon as possible. So they declined that. And now they're declining it again, but for very good reason, because at what more does Charles Oliveira have to do to get a title shot? What more? You're going to put him up against someone. And I understand the way that some people are thinking, well, Michael Chandler just put on one hell of a debut against, I believe he was #4 at the time, Dan Hooker, and he knocked him out in half a round. Sure, that could warrant a title shot on any other day. But when you're looking at such a blatant contender for that fight, the fights that make the most sense is Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira for the vacant championship, whenever that becomes vacant, because it is becoming increasingly clear that we are just dragging out the non-return of Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think he is done. I'm pretty sure Khabib is done. He's going to relinquish this title, and we're going to have to get someone in there, or two people in there, to fight for the vacant title. So what better option would there be besides Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira? Which is why I was so confused that they re-offered Michael Chandler again. Would that have been for the championship? I don't get it. I don't get it. It's clearly the triangle is Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, and Charles Oliveira. And then a sprinkle of Justin Gaethje. He's still in there too. But why they re-offered this fight on such short notice, I think they wanted it to take the place of Uriah Hall versus Chris Weidman that fell through at UFC 258. It's a hell of a matchup, but short notice and with so many implications. Why even bother bringing that to the forefront when you know what the answer is going to be?
Ooh,
I'm so many places we can go with this about this.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because not only, we're used to kind of silliness from the UFC, but you're used to being able to tell the motivation behind the silliness. I don't even get why they would do this. If the idea in the back halls of the UFC is, no, we still hate Michael Chandler and we still want to announce that he's the Bellator champ and then have him lose badly to somebody. Hooker didn't do it. So this is kind of like, Daniel LaRusso at the All Valley, just like, the next guy, will get him in the next round. But why would they do that to Oliver? Why would they do that at all? Why would they make such a high-level matchup with such important implications for the post-Nurmagomedov lightweight division on 2 weeks' notice? Why would you do that at all? Why wouldn't you want to see these guys fight at their best? Like, if you decide, okay, we need to have Oliveira and Chandler fight, do it 3 months from now if that fight is that important to you. If you don't believe in Oliveira yet. Because, hey, I've confessed on this show, I was much too late in coming around to Oliveira. I still had the, 2010 kind of weight-blowing head case, phantom injury guy still stuck in my head, and I had to get past that. Like, if you don't trust him yet, if you just really want to do Chandler dirty, at least make it a real fight. Like, make it a fight with no asterisk over it. Like, do you really want Chandler to lose on 2 weeks' notice against such a dangerous guy? Do you really want Oliveira to have a legitimate excuse, for the loss that breaks his 7-fight winning streak? It just does not make a lick of sense.
It actually does. And I was chewing on this for a while today, and I hope Ant is feeling me on this one. I don't believe the UFC believes in Charles Oliveira. I don't believe that they want to push him as a star, believe he can sell and draw the way they'd hope he would. The Tony Ferguson effect. You probably can think of other names that have other win streaks that are just not quite pushed despite, think about Max Holloway. Look what Max had to do with featherweight to get up there. This feels to me like the UFC slipping out a bit of information to almost slime Charles Oliveira. And I don't, maybe malicious is a little too strong of an intent. But this is a guy in Charles Oliveira who made it clear before 257. Yeah, I'm not taking a short notice fight. Yeah, I'm not sure I can make weight in that time, and the stakes aren't high enough. So he didn't take it. So for the UFC to circle back and say, hey, we know that you just said like less than a month ago that you wouldn't take a 2-week notice fight. You want to take a 2-week notice fight against a dangerous guy who just knocked somebody out and who's, ready and in fight camp. Of course he's going to say no. And then he officially said no because of the title. There's no title on the line, which that makes sense. You got to wait for that. But you got to be careful because Rashad Evans made that one mistake, and then we know what happened to him. It didn't make me feel good. It made me automatically start to think, oh boy, they're going to do Charles Oliveira dirty, because by putting this out there, the UFC can point to, he turned down a fight at 257 on the Conor card. He turned down a fight at 258 on the Usman card to be a co-main event in a big pay-per-view, showdown. It feels like the UFC is setting Oliveira up to fail, and that bothers me. I want to see if Ant feels me on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%, and I might even take it a little deeper than that. I think they want Charles Oliveira to reject this sort of thing.
Yeah,
because the longer, because the obvious thing here is Dustin Poirier being, the quote unquote uncrowned champion, Dustin Poirier being one half of the vacant title picture. That is the one thing we can stamp assuredly. What it says to me, if they're offering a fight with Chandler and Oliveira, even if it's in jest or not the most genuine offer or whatever phrase you want to use, man, it sounds like they're trying to set up a big fight for Dustin Poirier outside of the two obvious contenders for the lightweight title.
That's the other thing.
That's what that sounds like to me. That sounds like you're trying to get this Conor trilogy going. That sounds like you're trying to tap Nate Diaz on the shoulder and resurrect that magic that was lost at Madison Square Garden for UFC 230. This is what it sounds like to me. There is more at work, and then also too this sort of fake announcement. This is something the UFC has done time and time again. When they report that a fight is in the works or a fight is close to being signed, a lot of times I just don't believe it, simply because they use it as a negotiating ploy. So I would not be surprised one bit if that bout offer came across to Oliveira and he rightly so turns it down and says, hey, this is not the business. We're not doing this. But this offer was put out there to pressure him, to get the fans to say, hey, are you turning down this fight, or are you scared and whatnot, and to get that public, you trying to get the public sentiment in the favor of the UFC machine. That's what this looks like to me. This does not seem like something that was done genuinely. Now, if Oliveira did accept it, then cool. Then you can proceed, and consequences be damned. But the smart money says that's not what they really wanted. They really want this as something to lead to something else. Keep in mind what they did to Khabib Nurmagomedov to get Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez to fight one another. So this is a company that will play fighters against one another, that will offer fake bouts. We know this for a fact, that they have given bout sheets, they've given bout agreements to fighters for fights that they had no intention of actually promoting. I just throw this in with that same pile. There's something fishy, and Oliveira had every bit of intelligence working in his favor, saying, hey, you know what? I'm not taking this fight on 2 weeks' notice. Beyond the weight issues, Chandler obviously is a very dangerous opponent, and there's too much on the line for both men to leave it in the hands of that. So, I mean, this just stinks to promotional malpractice to me.
Well, I'm depressed now.
But it bums me out. It bums me out because I know we like to think about like meritocracy here and there, but sometimes we just don't work under that. We don't work under, that guy has a 8-fight winning streak. He definitely deserves a title shot. But the guy who just knocked someone out in half a round and cut, honestly, I thought it was a fun promo.
It was a good promo.
It was a great promo, and that when you utilize your mic time in that manner, of course you're at the freaking forefront of what they're going to do as far as like matchmaking, because you have the charisma, you have the talent, you have the knockout power, which is always great, especially when you're trying to make your case for a title shot. Michael Chandler hits all three of those and then some. And then you have someone like Charles Oliveira, who's quietly worked his way up into the lightweight division. He's a very humble guy. He's very chill, relaxed. That's not going to sell. He's just too nice. So we're going to go that way with Michael Chandler. And granted, I'm fine with a Michael Chandler fight with Dustin Poirier, but I'm just like, I didn't think it happened so soon. That's why I was shocked by this non-fight announcement.
Right. And like we're asking for like logic and reasoning in a division that has been devoid of that for quite some time. You know, right now we have, like, we just look at what just happened. Conor McGregor in a main event against Dustin Poirier for which clearly was being stoked as some path toward a Khabib rematch that Khabib does not want. By the way, Khabib retired and Dana refuses to accept it. By the way, Conor McGregor hasn't won a fight at lightweight since 2016, I believe it is.
Eddie.
Yeah. So, and we're also talking about the same. Charles Oliveira kind of got his boost by defeating Tony Ferguson, who, by the way, went on a record-breaking win streak and still didn't get his title shot and was still passed over several times along the way. So we're talking about a space that has been devoid of meritocracy and logic for the most part. Khabib being champion for when he was, and I say was because he ain't coming back. This was the best bit of normalcy we've had in that division since BJ Penn. To be quite honest, that something strange wasn't happening. Whether it was the close, quote unquote robbery decisions of Ben Henderson or the continued injury problems of Anthony Pettis, to RDA short reign, to Eddie Alvarez even shorter reign. There's been a lot of strange things that have happened at lightweight, and just chalk this as part of the bunch too, in my opinion. All right, so I don't know if I just drove the nail in the coffin on that one.
Yeah. Not on that one.
I might have. So sorry if I stepped on your feet there, Jay.
Not at all.
But I mean, I'll make it up to you by giving you first word on this next topic. Raquel Pennington has now been suspended 6 months by USADA after volunteering information that she has been taking some sort of prescription drug that is against USADA policy. Jay, do you think this is fair that she was still given this suspension after coming clean voluntarily?
I had a real issue with this, so I'm glad I get to jump on this grenade here. Raquel Pennington did almost all of the possible due diligence a fighter could do, and she went just about above and beyond anything any other fighter has done. The only thing she didn't do was read the label or ask her doctor, hey, can I take this because I'm a professional fighter? Which maybe you should add that to your little, you sign the clipboard and say, hey, by the way, subject to Olympic level drug tests, so don't screw with me. Because she took DHEA, which is a substance that we know that Lyoto Machida was also not flagged for either, by the way. Machida disclosed willingly that he was taking this substance, and it's without getting too far in the weeds, artificial steroids, synthetic substance that can be used for performance enhancing, but you can also buy it at GNC. Like this is DHEA is not a controlled substance. So
like a low grade fat burner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It's not a Tremexethone or one of those, the heavies, or Drostanones. It's not one of those big beefy KSW type medicines. It's in the lower echelon of things. And USADA went, okay, we'll keep you out of action for 6 months. Man, I feel like with these circumstances, and yes, I think it should be a case-by-case basis and not just a blanket policy. On these cases, I think USADA would almost be in the best interest of everybody if USADA was able to find out how long this substance would be in her system After taking it, it's done. Oh, it's done in 3 weeks. Okay, you're suspended for 3 weeks. Because then it's you're clear, you can pass your drug test, do whatever you need to do, and move on. Because keeping her out of this for 6 months for something that she was prescribed for a medical condition, for whatever, we don't know what the condition is, but it's something that needed this substance, and this wasn't a backroom thing. This was a doctor. Here's your prescription for this thing. It'll help you recover. And she got hosed for it. And yeah, I feel for her.
Anybody want to jump in before I just cannonball into this topic?
This is stupid. For one thing, DHEA should not even be prohibited. It's dihydroepiandrosterone. It is available over the counter. It's in the little pills that like 50-year-old men take to help them burn fat and maintain an erection for more than 5 minutes.
Wait, that's what she needed it for? Maybe we need to do some
So
more.
where can I find this?
I'm no comments on that at all, but just saying that's the kind of supplement that DHEA finds its way into. There's a reason that she and Machida have both been suspended for admitting they took this, and nobody has ever been suspended for getting caught using it, because it's not really detectable. It is at best a very, very weak testosterone precursor. It's just ridiculous that this is even on the ban list. It's additionally ridiculous that she was suspended for 6 months for admitting to having taken it. It's overreach. Like, this is not the stuff that USADA should be worrying about. And yeah, it's frustrating considering the kinds of things that continue to slip by them, that they're choosing to drop the hammer for stuff like this that just doesn't fucking matter.
Kristen?
You know what, with this situation, I'm in agreement with both of you guys, but I'm also wondering about certain things. Do UFC fighters have a banned substance list with them? Are they provided with this material?
Mm-hmm.
Can they reach the database in which you can put in this type of medication or whatever that you may be taking, and then you can see if that is definitely banned? I would say that I would hope, since Raquel has been here since even before USADA, she would take those steps to ensure that whatever she is ingesting that is of change to what she normally does, I would hope that she would make sure that what she's taking is not on the ban list. And granted, if it was for a medical reason, I'm also wondering if she was granted some kind of leniency for that, because I believe that the punishment was retroactive to the day that she actually said she was November. So she will be back in around like May, I want to say, if my math's correct. Mm-hmm. So I would hope there's leniency. I saw that Jeff Nowitzki, he actually said, Raquel Pennington did everything the right way. And I was like, okay, maybe a 6-month suspension does seem a little bit steep. But at the end of the day, a banned substance was taken. It is unfortunately on the ban list, even though it is such a minuscule thing that it really shouldn't, from what you guys are telling me, it shouldn't really be that much of a punishment for something so small. So 6 months seems like a standard kind of suspension. And I think that they're just trying to ensure that it is no longer detectable in her body. And if there was a shorter amount of time in which it was cycled out, I would think that they'd lessen her sentence. But at the same time, I think they want to say that, hey, we caught this. We made the decision to punish her for this amount of time. We do take keeping the sport clean seriously. And for that reason, that's why she was handed down the suspension. So I'm under the, yes, it was harsh, but also maybe it was needed just to keep up yes, we're keeping this a clean sport no matter what happened. Even if she was forthcoming, she still had to have a suspension or a punishment because she did something wrong. She admitted fault. 6 months is what she got.
One thing that I will agree with Kristen about here is that the fact that it was prescribed by her doctor has no bearing. It is not her doctor's job to know what is and is not permitted by Pennington's basically employer or the regulating body over her profession. Doctors have enough to keep track of already. It's just simply not her doctor's job to know what's allowed or what's not, especially when it varies by jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And you know what? Also, I think I give a little bit of leniency for Raquel too, because if there was some kind of grandstanding like medical issue that she absolutely needed this medication, I don't blame her for just taking it openly, because whenever my doctor prescribes me something, I'm taking it immediately, and then I'll be like, okay, let me make sure what I'm taking is fine. Because at that point, I'm just trying to solve a problem. I'm not worried about what kind of snowball effect this could potentially have. Granted, I'm not a fighter. I've never stepped inside of a cage or anything like that. But for Raquel, if this was really a big issue for her, a big medical issue that she wanted to deal with, because we still don't know what it is, like Jay said, I can't blame her for taking it. But I also hope that the next time she does something like this, she is very much more proactive in researching before she ingests anything.
Yeah, I think there's a where I'm a little more on her side is that she didn't fail a drug test, but she willingly said, hey, just started taking this because I hit my lips and it tasted so good, and whatever it is. But I just, including opening the browser and everything, the page loading, it took 15 seconds to get to the USADA list, and it took an additional 7 seconds to find DHEA. And that included scrolling and not just hitting Control F DHEA, and there it is. So I think that I am leaning more towards Kristen's strict scrutiny analysis, because banned substance, you took it, you're not supposed to take it, you're supposed to do the due diligence, and to that degree, she did everything besides realize I shouldn't take this funky thing. But I still feel it.
I'm kind of in between everybody here, but I'm much more leaning toward Kristen on this one, because a banned substance was taken, and you have to set some hard line rules here, simply because the potential for abuse. Imagine if, say, TJ Dillashaw said to USADA, oh man, you won't believe what happened, guys. Like I slipped on a banana pill and I fell on an EPO needle. Like it went right up my ass, and there it is. I have EPO in my system. Damn, man, I'm so glad I got that off my chest. It was totally an accident. Like the potential that fighters would say, hey, like I accidentally put this TRT cream on my shoulder, or like there is so much potential for abuse if you excuse someone for admitting that they did something wrong. That being said, like that substance in particular is a total joke, and it's a waste of time that anybody is even trying to police this, considering how ineffective it's been proven to be. But also like on a human level, I understand this. If I have a medical condition that is serious enough to affect my life in general, yeah, I'm going to want to take whatever medicine it is, and I may not be thinking about my job in the process. However, fortunately for me, my streams of income don't involve USADA regulating me. I'm not regulated by a state athletic commission. Like I don't have those same parameters. So I have the freedom to do that. Unfortunately, as a professional fighter, you don't have that freedom anymore to just take whatever because it affects your life, and that's an unfortunate reality, but it's true. I just don't like the potential for abuse that this has, and Raquel Pennington is one of the last people in the UFC that I would point to as probably taking steroids or trying to game the system or trying to cheat. Like this is someone who seems to take the most hard approach to everything she ever does in the cage, and doesn't seem like someone is going to take shortcuts anywhere outside of it. And it's unfortunate that she is the one who's made an example of this. And before that Lyoto Machida was made an example of, and where we don't really think down on him in those terms, but it is what it is. Like professional fighters have the potential to abuse this. Therefore, that abuse must stop. So yeah, just saying that you did it isn't a get out of jail free card in my book. All right. So let's move things along here. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the next topic is something that can't say I'm shocked about, and was very close to being I'm not surprised had it not been included on the outline. Megan Anderson found herself the subject of some unfortunate conversation on I don't know what I guess it was Sean O'Malley's podcast, Casey Kenney being a guest on it, and the question was asked, whether or not you would have sexual relations with Ms. Anderson, to which Casey Kenney, as if he had a chance anyway, stated that he would he said like a 4 a.m. or something like that if you drank too much or whatever the case may be. But anyway, the way this was handled, like there was kind of like no action about this. Like I'm sorry, like I don't even know how to frame this properly in a question, because granted we come across this sort of stuff way too often. But I'll just throw it out there, throw the subject out there. What are your thoughts on this whole ordeal?
I just want to start off with saying I feel so bad for Megan Anderson, because she seems like one of the UFC fighters that has to go through the most type of shit on social media. And none of it really seems warranted. I mean, she's minding her business, I would say, most of the time. And somehow, some way, there are comments made about her that didn't even need to be made, The situation with Casey Kenney is very unfortunate, because what she said in like her quick statement on Twitter, she's like, it's unfortunate that my workplace this is allowed to happen, essentially. And I get that. There are going to be times where you are reduced to nothing more than like a pretty face and genitalia, and that is definitely unfortunate, but it really shouldn't be happening. And Casey Kenney, first of all, the question was stupid to begin with, and I understand being put under that immense pressure to seem like one of the boys. I'm cool, I'm hip, I can do. Even cooler and hipper is just avoiding the question and saying, I'm not really into talking about that, or no comment. Next question. He answered it and then gave a reason for that, which is her being a 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or if he drank really too much. That's just so disheartening to hear. And especially that they're fighting on the same freaking card in a couple of weeks. They're going to have to be in the same proximity with one another. So knowing that, and knowing the comments you've made as a fellow coworker, I guess you could say, very disheartening, very hurtful. He did, I can't even say it's an apology. He made an acknowledgement that his comments were terrible, which they were. But I don't think that anything, if you start off with, I'm sorry if you were offended, should be relegated to an apology, because it definitely wasn't. The comment shouldn't have been made, period. But when you are given the chance to atone for those comments and you say, I'm really sorry that you were offended. No.
Yeah, that whole I'm sorry for your feelings thing. Yeah, just double middle fingers for that. That's some bullshit.
Consideration. Think about it. Her feelings weren't taken into consideration. They could have picked any other fighter or no fighter to begin with, but the fact that he did that and said those things and just kind of just been like, I'm sorry, but boys will be boys. I hate that, because it's like, oh, I can excuse poor behavior and bad decision making with that statement.
Like, I'm telling you,
as an adult.
I'm telling that whole segment was like the knucklehead hour. You know, like it was so much stupidity rolled up in that clip. So first off, like Sean O'Malley holding his baby, talking about like wanting to do heroin. So I'm like, what? Just all the way out there. Then to have that conversation, which like I would be lying if and I think every man would be lying if they said that they didn't have they've never had conversations like that. That would just be a total fallacy. And I'm sure women have conversations about the opposite sex or whatever sex turns them on. And that's normal, I think, to an extent. What isn't normal is putting it on a public platform. What isn't normal is is broadcasting this all over the world for said person to hear. Oh, by the way, said person that technically your coworker, even if you want to, I've seen a few dummies online flipping the whole independent contractor thing. The contractors are not coworkers. Shut the fuck up. They're going to be fighting on the same card. They fight under the same banner, under the same promotion. Like, they will have to cross paths at some point, and you're creating awkward situations that don't need to be there. So knucklehead shit is all that was. And is there anybody who has done more damage to a very popular brand to just torpedo the name and goodwill that they've created with fans? Like Sean O'Malley, is he taking the Jorge Masvidal blueprint and just ran all the way to the end zone with it? Jay, Ben, please stop me from jumping off a ledge here.
Everything that you two have said so far, I mean, obviously inappropriate. Megan Anderson doesn't need me or us flying the flag for her. You know, she's a very intelligent, competent, well-spoken woman who stuck up for herself immediately and in no uncertain terms. So more than, you know, like caping for Megan, it just does make me a little sad for the spot we find ourselves in the sport. And I saw the same people making the argument, well, they're not technically co-workers, they're all independent contractors. That may be true, but it is not helping your case. It's just making the problem even bigger. Oh yeah, that's one other protection that UFC fighters don't have. Thanks for making the point. It's the whole podcast was extra stupid. And if O'Malley doesn't have the presence of mind, the self-awareness, the skills to redirect a question like that, he shouldn't have a podcast. That's a skill you need. It's not just buying equipment, plugging it in, and talking to your bros. Like, if you don't have the ability to guide the conversation, then you shouldn't have a podcast. You should have a Twitch stream and let people watch you play games. Oh, that's right. That's what you used to do. It's extra unfortunate that he didn't see this as a problem. Obviously, females in any field, especially any field where you work in essentially your underwear, are scrutinized for their appearance more than men. But is there a man in the UFC who's marketed more on his appearance than Sean O'Malley? The colored braids and the tattoos are an integral part of his branding. You'd think he, of all people, could be sensitive about this, but no. Go try some heroin, Sean.
He might. I don't have more to say, much more to say than you guys, because you guys nailed it. But if I had said this about a female colleague of mine, I'd be fired, just straight up. If I did this, whether working at Sherdog or any of my previous places, legal community, anything like that, nope, they'd be like, "Oh, you can't. You can't. What are you doing?" Not only if I talked about it on this show, you know, I'd be done. It'd be the end of me. If I were to talk about Kristen that way, it'd be the end, rightfully so. It'd be the end of what I had to say, no matter what I said, because why would I be saying it? What's the point? What is the gain? To go, that was really funny. Yeah, I wanted to make people laugh because that was funny. I don't know. I don't see how some people can't realize, you know, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, period, let alone recorded on a podcast that apparently is somewhat popular. I mean, we heard about this shortly after it happened. This was the kind of thing that it not only was released on whatever platforms it came out, but it got to the fighter pretty darn quickly. And what are you thinking?
Nothing at all, apparently. That seems to be a running theme in mixed martial arts. And here we go, talking about it again. Dummies will be dummies. So let's go ahead and move along here to the speed bag. And this is where I get to flex my authority on you mofos. You're going to have 10 seconds to answer these questions. It will be round robin. Pay attention for your name to be called. Ben, I'm going to begin with you. Where will Anthony Rocco Martin land in free agency? You have 10 seconds.
It's tempting to say XMMA. He's right there in Florida, but I think he's a little above that level at this point. Give me PFL when they start.
All right, Jay.
Yeah, it's the only answer. I think they're the only ones that are going to be running events at that time. Rocco Martin will probably be in the PFL welterweight tournament soon.
Kristen.
Definitely PFL. Anytime you have a chance to make $1 million, I suggest you take it.
I mean, that's Simple enough right there.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to start with Jay on this one. If a fight keeps falling out for various reasons, how long should the UFC keep trying to book it before moving on?
Man, I saw they rebooked Ricky Simone and Brian Kelleher again. Like, how many times do we have to stick our hand in the fire until we realize it burns?
Kristen.
It depends on the investment and what the fight means, but I would give it a max 3 times before I say move on.
All right. And Ben.
I'm not superstitious. Keep booking it as long as it's the fight to make. Tony versus Khabib? Yes. Hamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards? No.
All right. So now, Kristen, you will begin the last question. If Frankie Edgar beats Cory Sandhagen, will the UFC award him another title shot?
I don't think so. I think the Pedro Munoz fight was pretty close, so I think he'd have to have one more win before they do that.
All right, Ben.
Yes. Frankie Edgar is like he's one of those guys that's never more than one fight away from a title shot. They just love to give that guy title shots.
And Jay.
I can't figure out how Frankie Edgar is the number 4 bantamweight after beating like number 8 or 7 Pedro Munoz. So yes, they will give him all the title shots.
All right. Now I'm going to reset that clock to say 30 seconds. I will do all of these in succession. The clock will begin after the first question is read. So where will Anthony Rocco Martin land in free agency? It's got to be PFL. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's in a relationship with Kayla Harrison. It just seems like a perfect situation right there for him to fight in that same promotion. If a fight keeps falling out for various reasons, I say stop trying to book it after 3 times. I mean, we don't want another pandemic. We don't want the world to end all because Khabib and Tony. And if Frankie Edgar beats Cory Sandhagen, he will not get a title shot. It will go to Holly Holm. So there we go. And we're going to let that clock wind down. I had time to spare. I was really feeling it today. There it is. So let's move along from that. Now the UFC is back in action this weekend from the Apex Center. Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov will be pitted against one another. Is this card more stacked than some of the pay-per-view events in your opinion?
It's close. It's really good top to bottom. It's one of those ones where even the undercard, it's fighters who have been winning fights. The fight that's it's divisionally relevant. That's not pink slip derbies in most cases. It's a really solid card top to bottom.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction that Duffy brings up there. It's not made up of fighters, to the top of my knowledge, mostly consisting of long losing streaks, like some of the last couple cards, like the Wednesday card, where the featured fight of the night was a guy in a 2-fight losing streak and a guy in a 3-fight losing streak. I wonder what's going to happen there. A crazy, silly knockout happened. Shout out to Hurricane Ike. You know, I look at this card and in the COVID era, I grit my teeth. I hang on tight to my desk and know, man, that card sure is pretty. I am waiting until COVID gets its hands on it. And COVID has been kind of poking its nose in already. Let me think. Timur Valiev's now fighting Martin the Spartan Day. Cody Stamann is fighting question mark as Andre Ewell. Had an interesting COVID situation. If we had more time to talk about that, maybe, where he tested positive and then a couple negatives, but the UFC said, look, you tested positive, we're going to keep you out. So that feels like a prelim policy. That doesn't feel like a Kevin Holland policy, but I digress. This is a pretty
policy either.
This is a pretty card. This is a card that if this had a big fight on top, the UFC, if they were really able to do this, and the UFC kind of is to ship things back and forth, grab Usman versus Burns, stick it on top of this, and you got yourself a good pay-per-view. But instead, we're now wondering what to do with 258, and that'll be fun. At least it's got Jim Miller, probably Green. That could be fun.
This card has like 3 fights that could be fight night headliners. Yeah. Saheda versus Dariush, shit. Sandhagen versus Edgar, exactly the kind of thing they would make a fight night out of. It's
Johnson versus Clay Guida.
Yeah, Johnson Guida could do it too. Yeah.
Oh, I was being facetious. Okay, guys.
No, actually, but like, you don't think that still wouldn't be that bad. Like, depending on what you had underneath of it. Like, I'm I'm still okay with seeing that as a 5
That'd be
round.
a fun fight. Yeah.
That'd be a good time. I'm just perplexed by how they're stacking these cards lately.
Me too.
It makes so little sense to me. I'm not mad at all that this is going to be my Saturday. I'm not mad at all at this, but I will be mad come 258 when they're trying to force something else on that card that doesn't belong. When they're trying to cram in Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler on 2 weeks' notice. I will be upset then, or I'll be upset, in between 259 and 260 when you got I don't know, you dig up I don't know, Francisco Trinaldo versus somebody else. I don't know.
Like, Hernandez too, the rematch.
You're gonna dig up something like that. Like that's what will get me upset. So this is sort of this huge payoff that's we're gonna really have to pay for later. Is what this looks like to me.
Yeah, like with 259 and 260, I think they're both triple headers, like championship triple headers, and I'm kind of shocked by that. But at the same time, in the era of COVID, when anything can happen, it's hard to get very excited for these type of fights just because the possibility of them falling out is so extreme. And it's just like, I know why they're stacking it like that, but it'd be unfortunate if we had to do a whole bunch of shifting and stuff like that for fights that sometimes may make sense, or sometimes it's just like, oh, it's there to fill up space. And I get it. But I'm worried that this repeated, because I don't think they do triple headers that often. I thought what was it? UFC 200 was the last one I wanted.
Yeah, 249 I think was the last one.
We've had like 5 triple headers before. It's real rare.
Yeah, it's not. And 214 was a triple hitter, but it's not a regular occurrence. Like this is not something that we should expect every couple months to come around.
Mm-hmm. That's why this card, I'm like, I like it. I like it. I like the main and co-main. I think there are a lot of potential stars. The same way that we were talking about LFA, we have the debut of Manel Kape finally happening. I felt like that fight was never going to happen. And I think that was the same fight that they wanted to keep rescheduling, which I was for, because it's with Alexandre Pantoja, right? Reschedule that as many times as you need to, because I think this is going to be like a litmus test kind of to see where Manel Kape is. I'm fine with that. And there are other fighters on there like Jocelyn Edwards. She's ended up stepping in on short notice. She had herself a fun debut. So I'm fine with those fights. I'm just cautiously optimistic that they stick together between now and Saturday night.
I'm still upset about Andre Ewell being off the card like that. I mean, that's my boy. Like, I consider him a friend. So that the personal part, but man, that dude can crack. So I really wanted to see him versus Stamen. So hopefully that's a fight that was a big opportunity for him too. Hopefully he gets another chance at a ranked contender, and we'll see what happens.
Let me ask you guys one question about this, a quick one for everybody. How many fights will make it to the card? There are right now on Monday night, there are still officially 14 because the plan is to keep Cody Stamen on the card somehow. So there are still officially 14 fights in the card. How many fights does UFC Fight Night 184 have by Saturday?
13, and they have to take 2 half fights and Frankenstein them together into one fight.
I'm going 10 because I think that, like, when we have this many good fights to look forward to, the MMA guys just laugh at us. They laugh at us, they mock us, they want to troll us, and they want to torture us. So what I'm predicting I'm going to wake up Friday and I'm going to turn on Twitter. I'm going to turn on the old Twitter machine, and I'm going to see all these fallouts and all these people that couldn't make weigh-in because of COVID tests, or someone slipped on a banana peel. I think that's the second banana peel reference that I've made today. Or there'll be, in fact, we'll bring up another reference from earlier today. Someone couldn't maintain their erection and they had to be taken off the card. There's going to be something to prevent more fights from happening, and that just tends to be what happens whenever we look forward to these fight night events that are really stacked. So it's going to happen again.
I feel like I'm with Ben on this one. Maybe 13. They might Frankenstein a few fights together, which can sometimes be a good thing. Sometimes the reformed fight is way better than the original one, but I think this one sticks together. I hope, maybe.
Man, I'm going with 11. I'm more on the side of that things are probably going to go awry.
Cue the people, that say that because you two are predicting things will go badly, you must want the sport to fail.
The UFC
like also known as you guys are Ryan Smithing.
I'm
Hey, for the record, I love Trent Ryan Smith's work, and I think it's hilarious that everyone thinks he's just like this negative dude who hates the sport.
Like, shout out to the homie Trent.
Dude, if he didn't love the sport, he would not go through this kind of abuse, to tell the truth.
Oh man, I mean, hey, I'm just trying to get on the next lineup for next Dana propaganda video. Like, I want my face next to Alex K. Lee as public enemy number one in media. So that's what I'm aiming for.
Good lofty goal. I like it.
Thank you. I aim high. All right. So I know we did kind of go over some of the card already. It kind of brushed over it, but Kristen, any one particular fight that you want to highlight? I guess you did kind of highlight Jocelyn Edwards and Carol Rosa, but and that or anything else you want to give a brief moment of spotlight to?
You know what? I'd probably say, what's the fight that Macy Chasson has? I think it's against Marion Renaud.
Yep.
I think Macy is one of those breakout stars as well. I'd like to see her more often in the octagon. So this, again, another litmus test just to see where she is in the division. But I think she's a problem, and I cannot wait to see how she deals with Marion Renaud, who is obviously a battle-tested veteran. And I think that she's going to do great. I think that fight's going to be exciting. I hope it's going to be exciting, but I got to give it to the ladies. Sorry to be cliche, but those are my two fights that I'm looking forward to. And the Manel Kape debut, because we've been waiting for that for so long.
Yeah, definitely. Ben, what's one that you're looking forward to on here?
I definitely feel the ones that Kristen put down. Marion Renaud makes me feel bad about myself and my life choices just because of how ridiculously fit she is at 43 years old. I've been dying for Manel Kape to debut in the UFC for over a year now. In my heart of hearts, I don't think he's going to carry over quite the sensation he looked like in Ryzen, but I'm here to see it, and it's the perfect test right off the bat. But to me, the most obvious one, give me Fajeda versus Dariush. Diego Fajeda is on a 6-fight winning streak. Beneil Dariush is on a 5-fight winning streak. Mostly finishes in both cases in the toughest division in the sport, and yet they're both just clawing at the bottom rung of the top 10 ladder. It's a ridiculously good division. There are no bad matchups to be made, but this one is sensational because they're both ultra high level grapplers who also can knock a dude the hell out. There's no way this fight can go that it'll be bad, because you're used to seeing the mediocre striking battle between two grapplers, but if they engage, it won't be mediocre. These are just two really, really good fighters who are putting it together kind of later in their careers than you might have expected, and in the most, after welterweight, the most unforgiving division in the sport. One of these guys is going to take a step back that, I mean, it will change the course of careers. Somebody's getting a long win streak broken. The other guy moves into the more serious discussion of title contention.
Yeah, I think especially when you look at Dariush, where he is in that equation. I mean, this is a guy who already was close a couple of times to being in serious contender conversations. So to have him paired up against a guy who's on this rapid rise, not really rapid as far as the time that they span, but his rise was pretty low key until he beat Anthony Pettis. So when you have that pairing right there, these are sort of the prime conditions for Dariush to lose, I think, but it still doesn't have the same level of danger in a matchup like the Edson Barboza fight was. But it's beautiful. That's all. It's beautiful, and it can go either way. And I'm not looking forward to making any picks or predictions on that one. Jay, what is fight that you want to highlight real quick?
All right, I'll take us home with a fight that we did kind of touch on a little earlier. There's nothing like two grizzled veterans that aren't afraid to take a loss and can still do the darn thing even when they're getting older. You would not, I will tell you this, and our lovely, faithful viewers, take this to the bank. You will watch the fight with Michael Johnson and Clay Guida, and you will not know, other than me saying it, that Clay Guida is 39 years old. You won't have any idea, because he'll still do the same thing he did back when he was the Strikeforce champion. Yes, he was really a champion in that organization. These are two guys, and I love them dearly for very different reasons, that really know how to lose fights when they're winning them up until the last second. And it's a very exciting contest, and then something happens and they get caught or they blow it. Like Michael Johnson, the Josh Emmett fight, walked into a big shot. The Stevie Ray fight, real close, gave it up at the end. The Thiago Moises fight, guy had won the first round by a wide margin, fell into an Achilles lock in the first seconds of the round. And then Clay Guida, he falls into chokes too often. But before you think of the Bobby Green fight, which was a lot more entertaining than a lot of people thought, and the Brian Ortega knee still kind of sticks in our head in a fight he was winning, by the way, until he lost with 20 seconds left. It's going to be messy. This is a pick that I'm really chewing on, if this fight goes the distance or not, because both these guys have the ability to lose dramatically in the third round. So I don't know if I trust them to go all 3 rounds, or if it's going to go until the 4-minute and 35-second mark, and then something happens and one of them slips on a banana peel and needs to take medicine to recover, and it's banned and they get suspended for 2 years. So, I'm all for it. Let's do the darn thing and break one of their losing streaks, because like the Ike Villanueva Vinicius Mammoth fight, Johnson's on a 3-fight losing streak and Guida's on a 2-fight losing streak. So someone's has got to go.
Are both guys' jobs safe?
What's that?
Are both guys' jobs safe?
Johnson's is not, I don't think. I
agree.
think he'll be getting close to the 500 mark on a 4-fight skid. I think that Guida probably more than Johnson, but
I think it feels more like an institution in the UFC than
that's exactly right.
That it just, I don't see Guida being let go, at least off of this fight. But definitely a good question there. And extra credit to you, Jay, for tying in several references from the show earlier today in the one sentence right there. If only you maintained your erection. Now,
what can I do? It's Guida's 30th fight. How can I keep it for that long? Go ahead.
Oh wow, phrasing. So the fight I want to take a brief moment to highlight is violence for violence sake. Justin James versus Devontae Smith. Somebody is getting finished here. Like it's going to be crazy. It's going to be sloppy. It's going to be extraordinarily violent. Something catastrophic is going to happen, and I'm going to be watching, probably drinking an IPA. So let's put that out there. Now, before we wrap things up, just quick around the panel here. What have you been binge watching, Kristen?
Oh, what have I been binge watching? So I started Banshee. That's an old
Oh yes, Cinemax show. That's the jam. Yeah, I
just told about this by my uncle, and I'm obsessed. I love it, and I wish there was another season, but apparently they didn't want to keep it going for some sort of reason. I don't know what that is, but so far I am enjoying it. I live for this stuff, and it takes me out of the repeated marathons that I have of ridiculousness and impractical jokers, which is almost every single day.
Well, yeah. Time to break that cycle. Yes, Banshee is a fine show. Ben, anything new you want to highlight as far as binge watching is concerned, or just watching? Period.
I just finished, watching over my wife's shoulder, The Americans. Definitely a really good show. I did not expect it to be that good. One of the better finales of any really good series ever. Like, didn't drop the ball at all. I'm not binging, but just still anxiously awaiting each new episode of American Gods. And because I hate that feeling and I prefer to binge things, I'm probably going to wait until at least the season is completely done before I even touch WandaVision.
Oh yeah, definitely. WandaVision was
same thing.
Fire this week. Fire. So I just put that out. I'm just gonna wait. Oh yeah, right now I am torturing myself right now. I can't wait for Friday to get my next taste of WandaVision. Okay, it was insane. Jay, what do you want to point out this week?
I haven't been watching any TV. I've been doing something that I meant to do for about 25 years. So obviously we all grew up in the well, maybe not obviously. We grew up in the video rental era where we could go to the store and rent the VHSs or whatever. And when I was a child, I always looked at the horror movie section and saw these wonderful, scary pictures and wasn't old enough to rent them. So they were lost in time like Tears and Rain. So there are these great 90s horror movies that I had never, or 80s and 90s horror movies I had always meant to watch and never did. And I wasn't it's not that I have any issues with it. I mean, I like the movie Audition. So that tells you how I ain't afraid no ghosts here. But I've been kicking it through like 80s, 90s horror movies that I always wanted to see. Like the last one I watched is Wishmaster, and it's a 90s schlocky kind of rip off of a bunch of other good things like Freddy Krueger, about a genie that grants wishes, but he's twisted and evil and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been a treat to go, oh my gosh, why did I have to wait till I was in my 30s to watch? That's such a fun experience. That's what I've been torturing myself with.
Nice. Well, aside from WandaVision, I just watched the last time my wife and I watched The Little Things, the Denzel movie that's on HBO Max. So good. So good. Highly recommend that. Also, I think I don't know if I said this last week, but I started watching True Detective, and I'm in the final season, almost in the final season. Fantastic show. Second season isn't as bad as people say, but it's just not as good as the first. That seems to be the only flaw in the second season, in my opinion. Dialogue could use some work too, but hey, I enjoyed it. So that will do it for this edition of Unleashed. Big thank you to my friend Kristen King for jumping on the panel yet again. We need to have you on more often. At the very least, me and you need to talk more often. So yeah, we did a job staying in touch. And the King and Slim column has now perished, but we still have this friendship, so it's all good. I do miss that column. That was pretty fun.
It was.
Yeah, it was a good time. All right, so of course, Jay and Ben, thank you again. As always, excellent work. And you can find their work on Sherdog.com. Kristen, you can find her work on Bloody Elbow and My MMA News. And I can be found on The Body Lock and MMA On Point. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. Tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and always stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.